Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plast here again.
Yeah, I'm Bridget. Hello.
Hello, and it's number 76 of... what?
Sounding the Shallows.
Sounding the Shallows. Yeah, we're still sounding the Shallows after 76 weeks.
Yeah.
Something's gone a bit wrong here.
Well, some things do feel a lot more normal, but not everything. Yeah. One thing that's still the case, you know, last week, Adrian, we were talking about you having a new title.
Yes, my new title is the Great Canceller.
Adrian the Canceller, yes. Well, actually, that has continued, hasn't it?
Yes, I've done a fair bit of cancelling this week. Because we both had nasty colds, I've had to cancel...
seeing friends.
Yeah, seeing friends, going to have our eyes tested.
Having breakfast out with somebody.
Having breakfast out, which is very sad, because if there's one thing we like, it's
so you are still Adrian the Canceller, but somebody very kindly added to your role, your title rather, and addressed you as Mr. Cough Canceller. So there we go. You're not just the canceller now, you're a cough canceller.
Well, that's very elevated, isn't it? What does that mean? That I just prevent myself coughing?
No.
Well,
I see. No, I don't know.
Right. Last time I had to do that because it was still... I've still got the cough, but we're getting better. We're getting a lot better.
The same person actually is still hung up on the whole names thing that we talked about a while ago, and said that she knew somebody called Kay who married somebody whose surname was Kay, and so she became KK. So there we go. I don't know what that's about, but I enjoyed it a lot, really. Yeah.
I love what people send to us. And we were also talking last week again about the way the name of Jesus has become kind of toxic in certain areas. And a friend of ours wrote and said, what about, we could use the names Fred or Shaun?
Yeah, to make it more friendly.
And was it him or you who discovered?
No, it was him.
Oh, it was him who discovered they actually have these meanings, apparently. Fred means peaceful ruler. Fred.
I know.
And Shaun, God is gracious. So there we are.
So actually, we more or less could.
You could use it. Friend. I'm not sure which of those is Father, Son, or Holy Spirit, but peaceful ruler, God is gracious. Yeah. It
was actually it was lovely to hear from people this week, wasn't it? Because I don't know how other people feel, but it's been a strange week, really, because we've got, on the one hand, COP26, and although it wasn't totally successful, then nonetheless, I think a lot of passion came through, and care and concern, and deep disappointment that they weren't actually really able to quite get everything together that they'd hoped for. And you felt there was something really wholesome, and then at the same time, I mean, our news has pretty well been dominated in the UK, hasn't it, by stories of sleaze, that word, sleaze.
Yeah, it's a horrible word, but very descriptive, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it does seem as though our society, our national community, is having to do a massive spring clean at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that still has to be sorted. I mean, all this stuff over racism in cricket.
Yeah.
I mean, how can that be? How ridiculous is that? And some of these things are quite historical. I mean, they're a while ago.
Well, of course,
some of the incidents are being talked about, but at that time you wouldn't have been able to talk about it. And what the reaction would have been. And at time,
I suppose at that time, things that would have been considered banter, really, there was a lack of understanding how hurtful things were.
Although, there was a big thing about banter, and there still is.
Yeah.
People excuse themselves by saying, "Well, it was just banter. It was just saying something light to help people feel more relaxed or something." But it is depressing.
I think for me, Adrian, I was left with a feeling, well, are we a sleaze-ridden, corrupt country? And then I started thinking about some things we're also hearing about in the news. I mean, the countries who, for example, did block the final statement for COP26, countries who aren't going to accept the fact that coal needs to be phased down or phased out.
Well, they wanted it to be phased out, but 2 countries decided it would be phased down, didn't they?
And
which
then
was
there's this
disappointing.
awful situation on the Polish border.
Yeah, but with Belarus and Poland. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, that's just awful. And that's surely that's much deeper corruption, smugglers, abusing people's vulnerability, and this horrible standoff between Belarus and Poland. These poor people stuck in the middle.
And Mulala popped up again this week, didn't she?
Wow, she did.
One of our heroes or heroines or whatever one calls them now, about her fear for the education of girls in Afghanistan.
Well, at the moment it's been suspended, but she said before, all those years ago when the Taliban came in, it was suspended, but the suspension lasted for a very long time. So you've got this kind of... It's very easy for us to feel that we have nothing to feel grateful for, but actually, I mean, these examples of racism, examples of sleaze, do they represent the majority of people?
I don't know personally the majority of people, but the majority of the people that I know, I think I would say are not like that.
Yeah.
But obviously it is happening,
unfortunately,
and it does happen.
They don't have columns in the paper, though.
No,
do
well,
they?
that's true. My auntie Elsie doesn't have a column in the paper about her views on those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a week of contradictions, and of course there are the other ones, aren't there, that have come very much to the fore in the UK this week. For those of you who don't live in the UK, you probably still may have heard about this man who had actually apparently converted to Christianity. He was an asylum seeker, but he became extremely famous this week by making a bomb, didn't he? And taking it in a taxi in order to blow it up outside Liverpool Children's Hospital.
That's right, yeah.
And that, I know, for a lot of Christians was a problem.
Well, it's a real shock, yeah. But Christians, I think we are in some ways quite childlike about this. That if somebody calls themselves something, then that is probably what they are. As with other faiths, if they say I belong, whatever it is, and they stand for a certain thing, you assume that's how they will.
Yes,
Well, that was a shock. It was horrible.
I mean, I think the people who do work with asylum seekers within the church would say, quite matter-of-factly, that of course there are some people who are going to use conversion in order to stop being deported, because if you say you're a Christian and you've converted to Christianity, that would give you the death penalty if you went home. And so obviously some people will use it. But I mean, we also know...
Well, I think I might if I thought I was going to be executed if I went back. I've never been in that position.
No,
I don't know.
But I mean, we also know, don't we? I mean, I'm thinking of people we know in a church in Middlesbrough and Coventry and Doncaster, and that's just off the top of my head, people who have worked with asylum seekers and seen some wonderful conversions, and people who have entered into the centre of their community life and offered so much and are such lovely people. So I don't know, where does that leave us, really? I mean,
I don't know, because I mean, we can only speak for Christianity, can't we? But because Christianity is not an exact science and never has been, the question, should we trust and be prepared for disappointment, or as wily as serpents against the deceiver, or afraid to be taken a fool? Should we be staying safe? Should we take risks? Or both of those? I certainly haven't got a tidy answer to that. No,
it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a very difficult one. I mean, it is no doubt that generosity can be abused. I mean, we know that. On the other hand, I mean, it's this laying down our lives, or laying down and being doormats, or there's going to be a ballot. There's going to be a tricky.
There is. I don't see any sign of Jesus being a doormat. I do see a sign of him occasionally voluntarily taking a doormat role, because that's what he needs to be or requires or wants to be in that particular position. Paul, out of interest, unlike most people, boasts not of his huge spiritual triumphs, but of his suffering. All the stuff he went through the times that he was travelling, which was appalling. And Jesus, of course, also would say, "By your fruits you will know them."
But Jesus also took risks, didn't he?
He did take risks.
You know, Judas was one of the gang. I mean, do you think Jesus? I know it's very neat to say that Judas had to take that role, but was Jesus disappointed? He must have been disappointed when they left him. So many of his followers left him.
Oh yeah. Well, one of our best-known theologians says that if we don't believe Jesus never doubted his divinity, we haven't understood the New Testament at all. And I sometimes think we haven't begun to understand. We're talking, I can't remember if we did or not last time, but about the fact that it seems clear God took a risk with Jesus. Now, some people are going to argue with that, but if Jesus was capable of sin, then you have to look very carefully at
I mean,
Jesus
was tough. Jesus was tough about the Pharisees who pretended to be one thing or said they were one thing, but whited sepulchres and all the rest of it. And there was one guy, in fact, the man who gave a home to the person who made that bomb, who said that on one occasion he refused to baptize somebody because he knew that they were just taking him for a ride. So there are times, aren't there, when you just have to be tough and say no, you know, what you're saying is phony. It's not right.
I remember, do you remember at Scargill House where we worked and mentioned a lot? People say promises when they become friends of Scargill, and there was one man who was supposed to turn up in the chapel to say his promises, and he didn't turn up. And I went downstairs, all the way downstairs, looking for him and called out his name. Excuse me. And eventually I found him in the kitchen, hiding behind the dishwasher.
Oh, Adrian.
He was a wonderful man. And I said, why are you not up there making your promises? He said, I can't make the promises. I can't promise I will do those things. And I don't want to stand up there saying I will if I can't. And in fact, we'd phrase them very carefully to say the promise was, I will do my very best with the help of my friends and brothers,
my brothers and sisters on the pathway. To follow the example of Jesus. That's right. Yeah.
Do you remember how when we were in Peru once, we were in a room with a group of Peruvian Christians, and they said, do excuse my cough, it's not good today.
I don't think they said that at all.
No, they didn't say that.
I don't think anybody said, do excuse my cough at all, Adrian.
But they did say, can we just say how envious we are of you living in England where everyone is a Christian.
Well, yes, I mean, I remember that, Adrian. I remember us thinking, oh, my goodness. We
sat looking rather sheepish, and it seemed because we didn't know whether to say, no, of course we're not all Christians, or whether to say, yes, you're right, we're very lucky.
I think we did say that we're a multi-faith culture. But this woman, and I remember it now, I mean, she really did tell us off a bit. She said, I'm not saying that everyone is a follower of Jesus, but I'm saying what you don't understand is how blessed you are to live in a country with deeply ingrained Christian values. And that really made us think, didn't it?
Yeah, so a lot of our heritage and our moral stance has a Christian basis, and the great reformers. Go on, name some. You can name some.
Oh, golly. Well, Shaftesbury and Wilberforce. And I'll tell you one that I can't remember his first name, but his surname was Rakes, and he's the one who started Sunday schools. And it was a huge thing. And I mean, people who really believed that that they were going to put the money where their mouth was, if you like. They were going to live out, and often it was completely against the norms of the time, wasn't it? But I mean, I think
puts it in perspective a little bit.
it does, and I was seriously excited about something, Adrian, just that came out just a couple of days ago. You know, the Queen is still poorly, and she wasn't able to go to the opening session of the General Synod, and Edward did it for her. But some of the things that she said were so amazing.
They were wonderful. I want you to read some of it. Will you read a bit of it?
I will, because I really was. You know, it's easy, isn't it, when you're looking at the royal family? There's so much noise around it all, especially because of the younger members of the royal family, and then Andrew and various things, to lose the perspective of the fact that the Queen really does have.
Because it starts very formal, doesn't it? Your Graces, the convocations of Canterbury and York, duly called together in obedience to our royal writs.
Yes,
but it's the bit after that that is fascinating.
Well, I mean, she says it's hard to believe it's over 50 years since Prince Philip and I attended the very first meeting of the General Synod. None of us can slow the passage of time, and obviously she's facing her first wedding anniversary without Philip, and she's ill and she's old. But she says, while we often focus on all that's changed in the intervening years, much remains unchanged, including the gospel of Christ and his teaching. I mean, there you go, right in the centre of it, not including some, the Church of England, of which she is head, or and the list of tasks that face that first General Synod may sound familiar to many of you: Christian education, Christian unity, better distribution of ordained ministry, but one stands out supreme.
Yeah, this is fascinating, isn't it? The one supreme task.
Yeah. And what was it, Adrian?
That was to bring the people of this country to the knowledge and the love of God.
Yeah. I mean, she goes on, of course, to say that the well-being of the nation depends on the contribution of people of all faiths and of none. But then she talks about the gospel. She talks about how hard it's been over the last few years, and then the gospel has brought hope, as it has done throughout the ages. And she talks about St. Paul, reminding us that all Christians are entrusted with the ministry of reconciliation. It just made me want to weep, really. It was so full of her faith.
And right at the beginning, she quotes it.
Right at the end.
At the end, sorry. A well-known hymn for some people, O Comforter, draw near, within my heart appear, and kindle it, thy holy flame bestowing. So there's a real hint of passion in there, isn't there? The love of God, the Lord's blessing, and something in there that said to me, or made me ask the question, especially with all this, are they Christians, are they not Christians? An authentic relationship with God, is that actually possible? What does it mean? What does it look like? I remember I used to tell the story about, it doesn't matter about the story, but it ended up with me asking the question, how many mistakes are made by misunderstanding and maintained by cowardice? In other words, you start off in a group, a Christian group, any group, and you learn to role play it, and you become really good at it. You might even become the Archbishop of Canterbury, I don't know, or a bishop, or a leader of a house group or something. And in your heart, deep inside, you're saying, I never understood this. I've never felt I've actually got to where I need to be.
And that vulnerability that people don't feel they can share. And we don't know what went on in the mind of this man. We don't know whether he was attracted to Christianity, but then other people got to him after that. And we don't know how vulnerable he was. We never really know, do we, what's going on in somebody else that makes it possible for them to end up doing something that on the surface is so obviously wrong, so obviously misguided.
There's obviously no excuse whatever for
of
that
course
behaviour.
not.
But no, that's absolutely right. And I think I was trying to think about this, and I think one of the problems has been that about certainty. Now, I've often said certainty is ugly, and I've rather repented from that lately. I've regretted saying that because sometimes it is. I mean, bullies who claim to be certain when actually all they mean is their certainty is based on an absolute refusal to look into their own hearts. That is ugly. And lots of bright, keen people, and we know some who need to ask questions, have just drifted away when that sort of inaccessible sureness confronts them.
But surely it's the doubts, the little niggly doubts that make you want to carry on asking the questions.
Well, that's absolutely right, and you need to be allowed to do that. And
Yeah.
we have, haven't we? We've known people who had a different kind of certainty. To those who didn't want us to be like them,
Yeah.
they wanted to love us with the kind of unconditional love God had shown to them, and just let us become whatever was right for us. And that sort of certainty of spirit, never with crude labels, and never expressed uncompromisingly, is not ugly. And if you think back over the years for us too, it's been like the best of food to us and to lots of others, and such a surprise sometimes. And I think those people will be amazed to hear that they're regarded in that way. And maybe we should remember who some of them were. And,
Yeah, maybe that's
and
a challenge for all of us, for people listening to this, and for us, and to just remember the people, yes, who totally just got on with the loving of us and waited for God to do the changing.
I think the Queen's right with her hymn quote, we could all do with having our hearts kindled, set on fire by love, and helping to do that for others. It's none of it's easy though, is it?
No, it's not, and I think we've probably raised some things that one or two people might feel quite strongly about one way or the other, so it'd be really good to hear, wouldn't it? Because
I'd like to know what people think.
It's been a week of contradictions.
Yes, yeah. We'll see what happens this week.
Yes.
See you next week.
Goodness me. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.